Hi, welcome to Creative View of Pacific Fabrics. I'm Erin Hubner, and today we're talking about sequins. With the holidays looking a little bit different this year, it's important to not only be comfortable, but also have that little bit of bling. Sequins are the easy answer. The project we're going to be doing today is a simple shrug using a piece of sequin fabric. We have a lot of them in store to choose from, and it only takes about a couple hours to make, but it's gonna have a lot of impact. As a bonus, you can throw it on over everything and you're gonna be completely comfortable the entire day. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna head into the workroom and I'm gonna show you how you put it together. Once you have decided what fabric you're going to use, we need to make sure that all of our edges are finished. If you have picked a lace like this with sequins on it, as you can see, it has a finished edge already. Perfect, this is great. We're gonna set this aside because now we don't need to do anything else except when we get to our cut edge. If, however, you pick a sequin that has a mesh selvage, like a lot of them do, we want to finish this so it doesn't look quite so wide and unfinished. All we're going to do is we're gonna fold it about in half and in half again. Then, this will give us a nice border. You're going to have your presser foot, and we are going to, using a zigzag, run it just along that edge. You want to make sure you're not sewing on the sequins, just next to them. And you're just gonna, as you go, sew along the edge, working a small section at a time. Pins are very difficult to use in mesh. They like to fall out. So rather than pinning this, I am just going to gently fold a section over like this when I get to where it starts to end. And then I'm just gonna keep going all the way along. And we're gonna do that on both sides to finish the edges. Don't worry if you're a little bit off or if they're not on either side the same width. Just keep folding them in half. You're not gonna notice later on. Another thing to keep in mind, sequins are terrible on your scissors. They will dull them very quickly. So I just kept the cut edge from when I got it in the store, and I'm just going to use that. I'm not gonna do any other trimming on it because I wanna preserve my nice fabric scissors. So the things I'm using to create the shrug are 1.5 yards of fabric. For this one, it was a sequin. For the other one I'm gonna demonstrate on, it's a sequin lace. The other item is fold over elastic. A lot of times sequins are actually on a knit where there's stretch, and we want to make sure that that can still happen so you don't have to worry about snagging anything. So our fold over elastic essentially works as binding. There is a narrow channel down the middle, and what that does is it allows it to fold in half real nicely. As we sew this, we're going to make sure that we're going to lay our fabric onto it. We want to make sure we're only laying it on half of it. We're gonna do this without pins because everything in here is gonna wanna shift and stretch. Pins are actually gonna make it more difficult, but we're only gonna work about a 6-inch section at a time on our machine. We're gonna use a zigzag. We're gonna start here. We're gonna go forward a couple stitches and backwards, and then we're just slowly and surely going to sew along here. Once I get to about here, I'm gonna stop my sewing machine. I'm gonna lay out my elastic. I'm gonna lay a little bit more on. If we get a little bit of overlap, that is okay. You especially wanna make sure any sequins don't go over, and you're just slowly, section by section, not stretching the elastic, but just sewing it down all the way across using a zigzag. So when I lay it on my machine, I am just very gently making sure a little bit of the elastic sticks out past the end. And where the plastic meets the metal on the presser foot, that is about where I'm going to have the edge of my fabric. So just lower my presser foot just a little bit. Make sure my needle is down in my fabric. And as I hold it, I'm just gonna very slowly do my zigzag. Once I get on my fabric, I'm going to back stitch a little. As you can see, I'm just using that little section happens, all I do is pull myself back a little bit and line up my next section and just keep sewing like that. Oops, we got some threads that are caught a little bit. If that happens, just lift up your presser foot, keeping your needle in your fabric, put it back down, and then you're going to continue on. And you're going to do this all the way down. Again, you're not trying to stretch anything, but you do want to make sure it doesn't get stuck and it just keeps moving. For this, I'm using a slightly wide zigzag of about 2 inches in length, or not 2 inches, that would be huge, 2 millimeters in width and about 4 inches or 4 millimeters. So I'm just going to do that all the way down the edge of my fabric. Now that we've finished our one long line of stitching, yours is going to actually be across the entire edge of the fabric. We need to finish it because it's a 2-step process. All I'm going to do is fold over the elastic end like that and fold it under again. Then I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to hold it in place. This is just so that when I get the needle through it, it doesn't fall out. I'm going to go over to the sewing machine. I'm going to put that under my needle. And when it's under there, all I'm going to do is put my needle down into it and pull out that pin. And then I'm continuing to use my zigzag. Just going to very gently start, do a little bit of back stitching, keep everything in place, and then I'm just going to keep going. I'm going through both layers of the fold over elastic with your sequins in the middle. Again, I'm not stretching it, I am just gently folding it over and making sure I'm going through. I'm using contrast thread so that you can see what I'm doing much more easily, but you'll be using one that matches your fold over elastic so you don't see it. And then, pretending that we're all done, you've got your 2 layers and it's nice and finished. You'll have 2 rows of stitching visible on the back, and on the front you're just going to have the 1. And for instance, if you use black on mine like I did, you can see how it just completely disappears. If you run into a time where your sequins are sticking a little bit over, all I did was gently stretch my fold over elastic a little bit over the sequin and keep on sewing. This is another time when we are not worried about perfection. After you've done that on one side, you're going to go back and you're going to do the exact same thing on your other end. Now that we have all 4 edges of our shrug finished, it's time to actually sew it together, which is super quick and super easy. What you want to do is, regardless of your fabric, and this one we're going to pretend that our edges on these sides are finished, is find out which of your 2 sides are shorter. These are going to be your armholes. For this lovely lace, it's actually going to be the finished edge that we didn't have to do anything for. All you're going to do with the right sides together is we're going to fold it in half. So it's going to look something like this. And then, if you look at our sequins, all I did is from the edge, I lined this up and I measured 10 to 12 inches from the edge. At that point, you're going to take it over to your sewing machine. Starting here, you're going to backstitch, and all I did was, because I had to fold over my selvages, is I just stitched along my original line of stitching, and I ended close to my fold over elastic finished edges. The reason I want to end here and not start here, when you are backstitching at the very end of fabric, it is much easier to get as close as possible to the edge of the fabric and backstitch, as opposed to when you start here and it tries to get stuck in your sewing machine. So you always want to start where you have a bunch of fabric on the back of your machine to let everything lay flat and sew toward the edge. After I've done that on one, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the other side as well. And again, this creates our sleeves. When I turn it right side out, you get something like this. As you wear it, you're not going to see this little gap in between the sequins, but it's going to make sewing it so much easier. At this point, after we've sewn those little 10 to 12 inch seams, you are going to be completely done with your shrug. And then you just slide it into your arms like this, and you are good to go. You've got all your sequins. I didn't worry about how straight these were. If they were a little bit wavy after sewing them, that's fine, because with the folds, you are not going to tell it. In the directions, what we have included is a formula to help determine what size of piece of fabric you need to cut so it'll fit you. You're going to be getting a minimum of 1.5 yards if you are an adult. And then there's just gonna be some quick measurements we take across the front of your chest, add your little sleeve sections, and you'll be good to go. And this is the easiest way to help celebrate the holidays in style. No matter what you're wearing, you can just throw this over and you are instantly dressed up. Thanks for joining me with Creative You with Pacific Fabrics.